Hey everyone, this is Max Steinberg, daily fantasy professional, former professional poker player, here to talk about how to qualify for a live final, something that I actually did this past weekend in week 8 of the NFL. So I want to talk about how I constructed this lineup, how I went with my stack, or it was a triple stack actually, and talk about the plays I avoided. Let's just really get right into it. So FantasyLabs has this great thing. It's called the ownership dashboard. You can actually get it for free. But if you wanted to know what they thought ownership was before the slate, by the way, they were pretty accurate this week, you can subscribe and you can get a 5-day free trial, or not free trial, 5-day trial for $15 by signing up. The link below if you're interested, hashtag advertising. But this ownership dashboard is free. And FantasyLabs predicted that Cincinnati was going to be a very, very high on stack. And my thought was this is probably correct. And as you can see, we have Andy Dalton, 18.5% owned, AJ Green, 33% owned, Tyler Croft, 20% owned, Joe Mixon actually high owned as well. I'm not sure I really expected that as much. So these guys are going to get a lot of ownership. So what can we do about this? So the first thing we're going to think about when constructing a GPP lineup is our stack. And so one way to do that is to sort of pivot off and make a lineup construction that's a little different than people are going to use Cincy in case Cincy fails, is pay up at quarterback. So Russell Wilson's a little more expensive. And as you've probably heard me say in some of my other videos, elite quarterbacks are the quarterbacks who win these tournaments. You guys, Matt Stafford, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, guys with running upside like Deshaun Watson. These are the guys who win the tournament. So it might be tempting to pay down for a guy like Andy Dalton or, maybe Blake Bortles on a given week or Jacoby Brissett on a given week. But it turns out that a lot of the times just getting these elite guys you're going to get guys who have really high upside. So pivot off of Dalton. And by the way, I thought the Cincy stack was good. Don't get me wrong. I like the stack. I used the Cincy. I used Dalton. I used Green. I used LaFell. I used Croft. I used Mixon and in different lineups. But for a qualifier lineup, I'm just not going to go that chalk. So we go up with Russell Wilson. Then I go with some real value here. So one great thing about paying up for a league quarterback, if his receivers have value, is you can get these value receivers who do have high upside games when our quarterback goes off. Paul Richardson, only 4K. Tyler Lockett, only 4,100. Jimmy Graham, only 4,600. So these guys are, real great value for a good quarterback. None of them were like totally under the radar. I mean, Tyler Lockett had some solid games in the past weeks. Richardson as well has been a touchdown machine. And Jimmy Graham, obviously, as well, as a name player. This isn't surprising. He's actually had scored 15 points the last 2 weeks. So these guys are all good value. They're not like so contrarian that's insane. And you basically have some upside here. Now, that being said, I got really lucky here in the terms of how I envisioned this lineup going and how it actually went. So how I envisioned this lineup going is I have Lockett and Richardson. Maybe one of them gets 100 yards, one of them gets a touchdown. Both get around 15 to 20 points. Jimmy Graham gets a touchdown, gets around 20 points. This ends up happening, although he gets 2 touchdowns. Russell Wilson throws for 3 touchdowns and over 300 yards. And then I was hoping that my running backs would get upside. Keenan Allen would catch 1,000,000 balls, and Ezekiel Elliott would do really well, which he was the only one who did. So as for the rest of my lineup, I think what's really cool with running backs, if you're going to pay down for running back on DraftKings, is pay down for running backs who can catch passes. Now, McCaffrey was actually pretty chalky. He was about 17% owned. But this is a guy who has shown sort of week after week, he can catch 5 balls, he can catch 7 balls, he can catch 10 balls. He can score touchdowns. They use him in the red zone. I think he's a guy who has high upside. We have not seen his ceiling yet, I don't think. And he actually had a disappointing game, but because I got so lucky with my wide receiver, it ends up working out. Jalen Richard, another example of this situation. Only 4,300, great pass catcher. He actually doesn't even have a great game, but he gets 5 receptions and some yardage, and that's 10 points even with a fumble loss. So despite the fact he had a bad game, I sort of see the makings of a good play here just because his low was actually not even that low. So that's what I do like about these pass catching running backs is you get 5 receptions, you get 6 receptions, you get a touchdown, and you have like 15 points hitting great value at a cheap price. Keenan Allen really just disappointed. I was expecting a huge game. It was great game flow for that. He ended up only having 4 receptions on 5 targets. Not sure what happened there, but he's a guy who obviously can have really, really great upside from week to week, just especially in DraftKings because he can catch a ton of balls, he can get the 100-yard bonus. It's definitely a red zone threat as well. Ezekiel Elliott, he was actually my favorite running back this week over LaShawn McCoy, just because he's a guy who's going to get all the red zone work. We're not that sure with McCoy. I think he's a better running back and a better running game. And Washington was decimated on defense. It was a wet game. Wet and windy, by the way. Wet and windy is a good situation for running backs. He had a fantastic game, and he actually didn't outperform LaShawn McCoy. But I think in the long run, he was a better play than McCoy. Then lastly, Eagles D. I have preached in these millionaire videos in the past to pay down for D. I really love the Eagles D. There's just a trifecta of things going well for them this week. 1, they're at home. 2, they're facing a rookie QB who's not very good. 3, it's wet and windy. Really, really good for turnovers. And they ended up having a massive game. I'm glad I paid up. Lastly, someone asked why I didn't bring this back. So I think bringing it back means using a wide receiver from the other side. I think bringing it back's fine. It just sort of is like a small correlation that adds extra. So if you think that there's 2 players who are basically the same, it's kind of like a tiebreaker. So if I thought Keenan Allen and DeAndre Hopkins were the same, and I think Hopkins was 7,500, I'd obviously use Hopkins. I did not think that. I actually, in hindsight, think Hopkins was a fantastic play just because he's so good, and I think people sometimes overrate matchup, me included. But I thought Keenan Allen was way better, so I used him instead of Hopkins. And it didn't pay off, but I don't think it's a requirement to bring it back. That's just a little added bonus that you just don't really need. So that's how I won this King of the Beach qualifier. Got really fortunate. I really imagined that these running backs were going to get me 15 to 20 points, and Lockett and Richardson were not going to do as well. Richardson actually had a 3rd TD called back. He could have been in for like an insane game. So that was a little unfortunate, not really. But yeah, so this is the lineup construction. And overall, just to review, I think Key's elite quarterback with value wide receivers, because those value wide receivers have upside. Using a cheap running back that can catch passes, I think those guys have upside and help the upside of your lineup. With McCaffrey and Richard. And then stud running backs in awesome matchups, wet and windy. I just really loved Elliott. I think this is just a pure projection play and has nothing to do with lineup construction, because in general, we don't really want to pay this price for running backs, but if the matchup is so good and he's so good that we need to do it, we should do it. So, hope you enjoyed this video. And I certainly enjoyed it because I'm hopefully going to Key West in December. If you did like this video, please click the like button. You can subscribe to my YouTube feed. You can also tweet me at MaxJSteinberg if you have any questions. And yeah, good luck next weekend with your football lineups. Good luck this week with your basketball lineups, and see you later.